tend to layer up bass sounds a lot with different microphones and amp simulation and a separate channel of distortion, or is it more straightforward than that?
No, it usually tend to, the track count usually run away. I don't like it, but
Yeah.
it usually does. And I experiment quite a lot. Sometimes I separate the frequency-wise the DI from the amp, from the distortion.
Yeah.
A typical setup could look like I'm cutting everything above 200-300 hertz on the DI, and then I cut everything below 200-300 hertz on the to create a crossover on the microphone.
Really?
Yeah.
So the microphone's above 300 cycles.
Yeah, and then I put the DI back again with a low cut from 5K and up or something like that.
Right.
So I get the string sound, the more solid low end. The crossovers will differ. It depends, how it sounds. And then I'm able to compress these areas separately without using a multiband compressor.
Fascinating. So the actual low of the bass sound below about 300s from the DI, not from the cab?
Sometimes. And sometimes I would do it differently. If I have a really good cab sound, because if you're able to use the cab and if the production if it works, then you get a lot for free there because you have the cab compression. And
when it comes to guitars, do you tend to prefer quad tracking or double tracking?
That's also a very good question. You've been researching this, I hear. It's that's always the dilemma, when you set the sound for production, which I always do, even though I end up sometimes reamping, even though I recorded myself. I always spend the time, go the extra mile to try to get the sound for the album while recording.
Yeah.
And then I tried out if I'm able to get the sound I want and the heft I need with two guitars. I'm the happiest bloke on the planet.
Right, you prefer that?
Yeah. I mean, much faster. I hate spending a week tracking rhythm guitars.
And do you ever use multi-cab recording when you're using just double-track guitars?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I don't. I know some people do it, with slave amps or whatever. It just hasn't sounded, enough in phase for me.
Sure.
So perhaps I would be able to someday, but usually it hasn't worked out for me. So.
And you tend to go with double miking on the cabs?
Yeah, I mean, usually what I do, let's say if I do a ground from the ground, a ground up guitar sound, I would sort of start to listen acoustically, which cabinets are the best. Obviously, I have my cabinets and I know them or whatever, but let's say that I are faced in before a few new ones or some endorsement amps are brought in or whatever, then I would like to try that. So then I listen to the cabinets and I listen to all the heads that we have available, usually 10, 15, acoustically, just to see how does this work, and then I sort of narrow it down, and then I try these with different mic setups. What I usually do is that I put like 4 57s on a cab, like on all elements, all speakers, and then I sort of narrow it down to this and this 57 is the best. The other ones are not that good. Let's replace them until they sound better than the first ones. And then, now these are the winners. Let's replace them until they sound better than those. And that way I narrow it down to, optimized sound. And then I try with, I like the R121, the Royer ribbon microphone. Use those. Perhaps I put 2 of those, finding the optimized position, possibly individually, but also together with the 57. Try to get the phase response completely perfect. And then I try. Sometimes it would end up being 2 57s and a 121 in a blend. Sometimes it would just be 157. Sometimes it would be 157, the 121, and in rare occasions it would be only the 121.
Sure.
And sometimes it could be another microphone like a 421 or 409 or
Got you.
you know.
Do you tend to go with a fairly purist approach when recording and not use compression or EQ, or do you tend to use compression and EQ in various elements of the recording stage?
For rhythm guitars, I would never use a compressor. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would pass it through an LA3 just for the sound.
Coloration,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's more the transformer sound.
And what, just a couple of dB of gain reduction? Nothing at all,
Nothing
just
at all.
run
Yeah.
the signal through, okay. And you probably compress vocals down as well?
Yeah, always. I never record vocals completely straight.
Sure.
And sometimes I EQ. I do EQ rhythm guitars and guitars a little bit while recording, and sometimes vocals.
Do you tend to take clean drum hits from the kit used for tracking?
Yeah. I mean, I change drum heads all the time while recording as well. We usually go through 15 snare heads and 3-4 setups of tom heads, and I always do a completely clean sample session as well.
Yeah.
I rarely use it for anything, but I want to have it.
So you never use samples from the drum kit used for tracking in the mix stage?
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Staying with drums and compression for a moment, you're a big fan of the 1176, right?
Yeah, it's. I think it's the Swiss Army knife of compressors.
Yeah. Do you tend to use it? Do you tend to use it for sort of like sculpting?
Everything.
Sculpting everything. Yeah.
I like
Okay.
I like it to distort.
Yeah.
I like distortion a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And especially, I don't know. I don't think I ever felt the need for that much distortion in the past when I was working on SSL. I had an old E SSL that I did both Ghost Reveries and Watershed on. But
Right.
I guess things were just a little dirtier.
Sure.
then.
Sure.
But these days I have a hybrid setup, and things are pretty clean. So I usually sort of need to do more.